Moon Knight or Marc Spector is not your average superhero. He's not a billionaire, not bitten by a radioactive creature, and not genetically enhanced. He's a mercenary turned avatar of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. But that is just the surface. His true complexity lies not in his God given powers, but in his fragmented psyche. And what makes Moon Knight so fascinating isn't just that he has multiple identities, but rather, it is why he has them. Stephen Grant, the timid, awkward museum worker, Mark Spector, the hardened mercenary, and then, as the show later reveals, Jake Lockley, a brutal, unapologetic enforcer. Each of these identities isn't just a disguise, but a coping mechanism, a response to childhood trauma and grief so intense that the only escape was fragmentation. Moon Knight's mental landscape is shaped by dissociative identity disorder, a real and deeply complex condition. And I'm so glad that the show doesn't treat it like a gimmick. Instead, it dives into the core reasons these alters were born of. The trauma that Mark faced began in childhood when his younger brother tragically drowned. His mother, unable to cope with the loss, blamed Mark. What followed was years of emotional and physical abuse. A child's mind, desperate to survive, created Stephen Grant, a different personality that could believe he was loved, a personality that didn't force to carry the guilt. And that is where the heartbreak lies. Stephen isn't just a random alter ego, he's a sanctuary, a version of Mark that could exist without pain. Every scene where Stephen is confused, disoriented, or terrified is layered with a deeper tragedy that he was never meant to know the truth in order to survive. Superpowers are usually the highlights in the Marvel stories, but in Moon Knight, they are reflections, mirrors of identity. When Mark is in control, we see the traditional Moon Knight suit, brutal, aggressive, powerful. And when Steven summons the suit, we get Mr. Knight, dapper, polite, awkward. It is not just for style, it is psychological. Steven's Mr. Knight is his attempt to be heroic on his own terms, organized, problem solving, trying to help. On the other hand, Mark's Moon Knight is the fist of vengeance, shaped by his military past and need for justice. Each suit reflects how that identity processes conflict and danger. One runs into battle, the other talks it out. One of the most compelling aspects of the show is how it visualizes inner conflict. Steven and Mark aren't just voices, they interact, argue, and fight for control. This inner war is messy, confusing, and incredibly human. And the show does a very well job of building tension not through external threats but through these psychological battles. Whether Steven discovering he's not the original or Mark trying to protect Steven from the trauma. And then Jake Lockley, the wild card. Introduced subtly, Jake is the part of Mark that does what neither Steven nor Mark can. He kills without hesitation and obeys Khonshu without any remorse. Each of this identity reacts to danger differently. Steven panics, Mark strategizes, and Jake eliminates. This triangle is what makes Moon Knight so unique. It is not about which personality is dominant, it is about how they coexist, clash, and evolve. There is this one scene that defines the entire series. When Steven realizes the truth about his mother, the moment where he walks through the Mark's memories, see the abuse, the funeral, the silence, it is not just a twist, it's a moment of devastating catharsis. Steven, the cheerful and soft spoken identity, realizes he exists because of unbearable pain. He wasn't born, he was created out of desperation. And Mark, the real one, has carried all the guilt, the secrets, and the burden of surviving. But now one may ask, if Mark still suffered, what was the point of the dissociative system? The answer is hauntingly simple. It kept him alive. The pain didn't disappear, but it was compartmentalized, pushed into different corners of the mind, so no single identity had to break completely. Stephen gave Mark moments of normalcy, however fragile, that escape from that childhood buried pain even if temporary, was a survival. And therefore, Moon Knight isn't just a superhero origin, it can also be considered as the study of trauma, of how memory can be both a shield and a prison, of how grief, when unprocessed, doesn't just linger, it takes shape and form into psychological conditions like DID. In a universe filled with gods, aliens, and multiversal chaos, Moon Knight stands out not because of scale, but because of intimacy. The writing doesn't rely on flashy world ending stakes, it roots itself in emotion, in humanity. Mark Spector isn't trying to save the world, he's trying to save himself. Stephen Grant isn't trying to fight crime, he's trying to find the truth. And Jake, he's the grim reminder that survival sometimes demands brutality. What makes this character writing so powerful is that it treats trauma with sincerity. It doesn't romanticize it, it doesn't wrap it in jokes, it shows it raw and unfiltered. Moon Knight isn't about a hero who saves others, it's about a man trying to piece himself back together. A man who wears mask not to hide, but to survive. In the end, Moon Knight isn't just a character, but a question. How much of ourselves do we bury just to keep going? And when those buried parts rise back, who do we really become? If you found this breakdown meaningful, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let us know in the comments which character you want us to explore next. Thanks for watching.